got the alternator light blinking on and off. Going about 60 on the freeway. Here in California, that's going to get you killed. But I think the alternator might be on its way out here, so we'll check it when I get home. I got probably about another 10 minutes. All right, so we're back after a couple of days since that alternator or the charging light came on. Don't know if it's the alternator quite yet. Something that did happen that I did not record when I got home, I did check the voltage of the battery, which would also show the charging system with the car running when I got home. And at the time it was 11.7 volts. And if I increased the RPMs, it actually went down a little bit. So it was below 12 volts. I believe that's the threshold for throwing that charging system light. When this thing was warmed up, by that I mean when I drove from here to downtown Sacramento. It's about a 30-minute drive, and about halfway through each time, so there and back, the light came on, and it was actually kind of flickering on the second time until it stayed on, and then when I got home it was measuring about 11.7. But I also turned off a lot of accessories, so maybe it prolonged it. But what I want to check right now, we're going to check battery voltage, see if it's still in that kind of 12 point whatever threshold to make sure it's a good battery, and then we're going to turn it on and see what the state of charging is. What I want to do is verify if it goes above the voltage of the battery, or even preferable into the 14 volt range, to say, okay, all of the system itself is fine. It's just when this thing warms up, it starts losing charge. Like it loses capability of charging, which to me would probably say that the alternator is just failing as it warms up, which I will say I wouldn't be surprised. I did wash this thing with water maybe about 2 months ago, and I did not cover the alternator. I had everything unplugged and I let it dry for probably about 8 hours. Didn't think it'd be a problem, and I air dried everything, and it seemed like it ran pretty well after that. But it seemed like it was actually, it wasn't really holding a battery charge for too long, although I do let it sit. But long story short, I did wash this whole engine bay with water, and I did not cover the alternator during that time, and I think maybe that might have accelerated the inevitable, but let's see. So I'm just going to verify. So I have my multimeter, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check voltage of the battery. So as you guys can see, that it is 12.26, so it's a little on the low end, obviously, because it's not charging very well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this up, and we're going to see what the voltage is when charging. All right, so we just checked it. The charging system's at about 14 volts, which is completely normal, although maybe like a tenth of a volt lower than I usually see. But what I want to do is I'm going to turn on all the accessories in here, including like AC and lights and whatnot. So we're going to flip on lights. I do have the radio going, but I am going to turn on the AC with blower on high. So we have a bit of a load on it now. So let's see where it's sitting charge wise. Again, this is a cold engine, so what we'll do is see where it's at cold. I'll let it warm up and see if it drops at all. All right, it's warming up a little bit. Probably been going for about 5 or 10 minutes. Runs pretty smooth, but we'll see. Let's set it back up and see where she's sitting at charging wise. gonna go turn off the load real fast, so you guys can see. Yeah, still going down. All right, so I just turned it off. I feel pretty confident in saying that the alternator down here, this little guy, is losing its ability to charge as it warms up. If we had problems in terms of there was no charging at all whatsoever, so like say the battery just stayed at 12 as you were right when you turn it on, and nothing ever changes as it runs, and maybe it's going down a little bit because it's sucking power from the battery, then you would probably not want to look at the alternator. Here's where you would look at fuses. So as you can see here, you have a big fat 120 amp relay for the alternator. Then you have another alternator fuse. That's probably where you want to look. I did check that earlier and they're fine. Obviously the system charges while cold, but in this case, as it warms up, it loses its ability to charge. And as you saw, the belt is tensioned correctly. So with these, if you turn them, it's probably maybe a smidge on the loose end, but you definitely do not want to tighten those up too much. But turning them about 90 degrees is usually an indication that they're, about where they need to be. But what we're going to do is I have a Denso remanufactured alternator. We will take this one out, throw the new one in, and see how she performs. Again, I gave you guys sort of a quick test. It was just to show that it does kind of drop off in performance. The longer you drive, the worse it gets. So I took it on the freeway for about 30 minutes, and when I got home, it was only charging at 11.7 volts, and that's how the light turned on. Let's get to it. For me, it'll be a couple days before I get started, but for you, it will be the next scene. All right, so we're back. Let's get into it. I need to take off the ground here for the battery, and then we'll start kind of dismantling the two connections it has on the alternator, but let's get going. All right, the next two things that we need to get is this black connector in the back and this power connector. It has a cover on it, so I'm gonna want to take that off without breaking it. Nope. Well, that's it. So if you lift from the back, you pull it up. See if I can get a hand in here to pull it off. Ideally, you like to do this with no tools. It's also not a big deal if those don't come off yet. We can definitely get this one off though. Let's snag that off real fast. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. This connector here, and this cable, we'll keep it on for right now and see if we can remove this alternator first. So way down there. So want to loosen that up, and then you want to back that out, so the belt, the one on the right there, so that way the belt gets nice and loose. This is going to be a tough angle here, so what I'm going to do is go back up to the top, but those are going to be the two bolts that I am going to take out here, and then when I go to remove this, I'm going to remove that one on the left, and that should free us up. There it is. Stupid thing. All right, let's take this bad boy out here. So this is where the adjuster sits, right in here. You see that opening? So once you loosen it up, you can actually pull it out and push it that way. So once you have everything loosened up. So what we're gonna do is when we drop this in, we'll have the adjuster on the alternator,
so that way we don't lose it, and we'll just drop it in this bracket. So, all right, let's take a look at the alternator. All right, here is the old Toyota one. You can actually see it. It says Toyota Denso on it. Don't know much about them, if it probably says the year or not, but remanufactured Denso. So it could be the same one that came off this unit. And I have to keep that box. Yeah, look, it still has that little bracket there, but I think that will live without it. So that's it. Actually looks kind of smaller, huh? Same design. Maybe it's the same. I don't know. It has to be, I'd imagine. I mean, it looks like it's the same stuff, but this one's a Denso remanufactured. So let's get set back up and we'll put it in the car. All right, so looking at this again, I think I won't wire wheel this. I don't see any corrosion, and I don't want to, especially if it has like a coating on it, I don't want to mess with that. Yeah, it tightened up more, but that actually feels really good because the deflection, it shouldn't go down too much. May tighten up after we warm it up a little bit, but feeling that actually feels really, really good. All right, let me check everything one more time just to make sure everything's in. We'll fire up and see how it charges. Let's see where this battery's sitting voltage wise. 12.26, a little on the low end, but let me start her up, see where she's at, and then if everything looks okay, take her for a little drive, and hopefully holds charge after it warms up. It may start up kind of funky with the battery unplugged, we'll see. We'll turn it back on. I am going to check, make sure that the belt tension's still okay. That feels really good. I didn't hear any slipping or anything. It doesn't feel too tight. If it was like it was going to snap, you'd want to change it. But I feel a little bit of deflection. Definitely has a lot of twist in it. So we should be good on the tension. Turn her back on. Cool. So it's still cool right now. We'll let her warm up. What I'll do is, I don't have a lot of accessories on. I'll turn on the accessories, let it run for a little bit, and then we'll see how she's charging. If she's still at about 14.1, which I have a feeling that's what it's going to be, take her out for a little test drive, and I'll see if I can pick up something a little special for future work here on the channel. But let's let her warm up.
All right, it's warming up a little bit. See you there. About where we did it last time. AC's cranked, so I have that all the way on. I have the headlights on and the radio going, so it has a little bit of a load. Let's see what kind of volts she's reading here. Let's see where it is with this new remanufactured Denso. Interesting. All right, let's turn the load off real fast. All right, I just turned off the AC and the headlights. Oh, interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that. It is higher, so that's taking the load out of it. Could it be that the battery is kind of low? As you saw, it's 12.26, so the battery is taking quite a bit of a charge. And with the AC cranked and the headlights going, it was definitely lower. But I'm going to keep an eye on that, because that would be really interesting if there's something else going on in terms of a power draw. And possibly the alternator's not bad. I doubt it, but we'll keep an eye on it, because I thought it was the alternator this whole time, and that would be really interesting if there's something else going on. So I'll take this thing for test drive. It's obviously not going to blow up. It'd be nice to let this thing charge for a bit and do some driving. So I'll take it out for a couple rips, and then we'll just see how she's doing after she warms up a bit. All right, so I drove it around for like a few miles, maybe 10 miles, and it sat for probably the last hour, so the battery kind of came down, but it's already 0.3 of a volt up. So I'm thinking the little bit we're seeing under 4.1 is just this battery's pretty depleted, so a lot of electricity is going to this battery. And so when other things kind of take a kind of need a electricity demand, it definitely is hitting that alternator hard, but it's definitely bouncing back. And this system's a little bit different because the brakes are not connected to a brake booster. That one is electrically charged nitrogen, so I believe it pulls a vacuum on this nitrogen charge, and that's how it applies pressure. So that has a bit of a demand, as you would imagine. And then obviously just the electronics are a little more advanced than, say, just a regular 5VZ. So that's probably what's happening. And in this case, this battery's pretty depleted, so a lot of electricity is going to charging this battery, so you got kind of a load. But we'll keep an eye on it. But I want to give like a nice test drive and just verify that it's not dipping below 12 volts. But yeah, I think we're looking pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so I've driven the car roughly about 20 miles this last trip, probably about 8 miles, but it was a lot of stop and go. It's been on for probably half an hour, pretty equivalent to when it would throw that light. In fact, it would be longer. So what we're going to do is check the voltage at idle, warm. I have not turned the car off in probably half an hour. So let's see what the charging system is doing now. Yeah, really, really steady. All right, let me turn it off. I want to see what the battery voltage is right when we turn it off, to make sure it's getting a charge. Because remember, it was like at 12.2 before. Yeah. So that was definitely like peak charge voltage. Usually you'll be at like 13.1 and then it drops. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit for let's do like a few hours. I'll come back in a few hours and we'll double check where this voltage is just to make sure the battery's charging. I did check it after like the first 10-mile drive or whatever, and it was up a little bit. I want to see how it is now, and I do believe those low voltages we were seeing before was due to this battery being so depleted and obviously taking a lot of the alternator's resources, along with all of the other electrical components, which is pretty vast on this vehicle for its age, and which is kind of funny because it doesn't seem like it uses a different alternator, even though the electrical needs of this engine are way higher than, say, even the year before it or anything like that. Or say like you have like a 98 or a 99 with the 5VZ in it, where you have the hydraulic transmission, and then the brake booster is going to be vacuum and everything like that, whereas all of this is going to be controlled electronically, which, believe it or not, takes electricity. So so I want to go over it more in detail in the garage, but I really think that the alternator failed in terms of current it was providing, which you can't really test with the voltmeter, but I can tell you some of the symptoms I saw and what it's doing now. But really interesting stuff. So let's see where this battery is in a few hours, and then we'll go talk about it in the garage. All right, so it's been a little more than an hour, probably like an hour and a half since I turned this car off. I have not checked it, but we're going to see where the battery voltage is after it's sat for a bit to make sure that it is charging. Perfect. So it's stabilizing higher. 12.6 is really, really good. Generally, a fully charged battery you'll see sit at 12.8, but a little bit lower is just fine. So what that's telling me is that this battery is finally charging up and retaining that charge, which is also a second part of the component there. But the alternator seems to be working. It seems once you kind of get it running, and this has actually taken a bit of a charge, it's a little bit better at holding that voltage closer to 14 volts. So I think that we're looking pretty good here. So let's close this video up. Yeah, so let's keep this just short and sweet. That definitely was the problem. The alternator that we put in new, the remanufactured Denso, after more driving, nice long distances and what, I think I put another 20 or 30 miles on it at various speeds and everything, and the voltage is getting better and better, which is telling me that the battery was taking quite a bit of the load in those initial tests. But something I did notice with that 2001 4Runner, because there's a lot of components on it that run off of electricity, and I think specifically voltage and ampage and stuff like that, particularly the brakes, the transmission, and the throttle body response. All of that's going to be pretty heavy electronic components there. And each one of those has gotten so much better, particularly the brakes. I always was thinking that something was wrong with the brakes probably for the last 5 years, 6 years, in terms of the squishiness. It just didn't seem, and it didn't seem like it was that good. And I have brand new pads on it, shoes. I've bled the dang thing way too many times for it to be that squishy. But as soon as I have put this new alternator on, and especially after driving it a bit, and less of the load is going to that battery, it's probably one of the best braking systems I've ever experienced. I could see why Toyota liked it. But one of the key things is that you have electricity going to it. That was really interesting. And the transmission as well. One of the big differences I'm seeing is how much more engaged the transmission is. By that I mean, before you'd hit it and it was very, very sluggish, and downshifts were, I wouldn't call them erratic, like it was a problem or anything, but it really felt like a boat for not that big of a vehicle. If you're familiar with like the throttle valve cables where you can adjust them, it was almost like an out of adjusted throttle valve cable, like way out of adjustment to where it's just not kicking down at all. And so it just felt like the engine was doing stuff and nothing really went to the wheels, but not in like a problem. It was just like, oh wow, there's no balls to this thing.
Whereas now it's like, whoa, I feel like, I was like, okay, this is how the car's supposed to feel. That's funny, which I guess takes me back to the main point. Before, I was speculating that washing the engine bay and getting water in the alternator, even though I had the battery disconnected, so there was no electricity going to it, and I air dried the engine bay. I had a blower that blew out as much water as I could. I know it doesn't get it all, but I did let it sit in very hot weather. This was probably in August, I think, or September, but very hot around here, hot and dry. So it doesn't take long to dry things outside. So I let that sit for like a day and buttoned it up, and that thing was butter smooth and very clean. Well, I mean, you saw it. I mean, it's not like, you can eat off of it or anything, but much cleaner than it was. And there was no problems different than what I had. So my thought is the alternator just finally let go of the ghost, just stopped charging after it got hot, which is pretty dang impressive for the age of that thing. It's a 2001. It was the original alternator, and it has about 260,000 miles on it. And it's, barely been driven, so it's had to put out a lot to charge that battery for a long time. But yeah, no, it was just a very easy fix. I wanted to show that, and I did want to note anybody that has a 2000 to 2002, I think that's the range, a 4Runner, that if you're experiencing like squishy brakes, kind of a lagging transmission, the throttle response seeming a little lackluster, I would seriously consider just getting the alternator. It wasn't horribly expensive. That remanufactured Denso, so what would be in the car, was about $160, and that's after the core, which isn't bad. That's like really, really good. And you guys saw me. It took me all of 30 minutes to put in, So, and there wasn't much to it. Yeah, I really think for that car, but in particular, especially newer cars, if you're having any sort of problem, like if it sits for maybe a week and the battery just seems dead, or if it's cold and doesn't seem like it's cranking, like you're just not really charging the battery when you drive, or if you have electrical components that just seem like they're not really, working to their full potential, look into that alternator. Or just, like me, wait till the light comes on and then fix it. So yeah, I wanted to put that out there. Hopefully that helps some people with their adventures in car repair. So thanks for joining. And like I've been trying to push more and more, if anything in this channel helps, feel free to like a video, leave a comment, subscribe. Everybody is begging for subscriptions, obviously, because that's how you get into the threshold of making money. And everybody likes making money. So I do ask if that is something you're willing to do for the channel, and subscribe or like or anything. You can do that. If you think I suck, then I say leave a comment, because that helps me too. And so that would be funny that you think you're getting at me, and it actually helps me with the engagement. So do that too. You can tell me how wrong I am, all the bits and pieces I got incorrect. In fact, I learn a lot in the comments. So, if you want to educate me on any part of it too, feel free, because it's really quite fascinating how many experts are out there. And I'm not saying that ironically. Like, there's a lot of really, really smart people just roaming around the comment section. So if you are have an ego enough to actually go through and take everything with a grain of salt, but kind of like figure out who's who in there, there's some really, really good information in the comment section. So I'm not dissing it fully here, but yeah, feel free to engage, because it helps. But I guess that's all I'll say about that. But again, thanks for joining, and here's what I think I may have in store here in the near future.
Let's see what I have back here. Bum, 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 bum. More chainsaws to work on. Yay.